for joining in. If you don't mind, can you please turn on your camera?
1 minute.
All right. Hello, Ritvik.
Good afternoon.
Ritvik, my name is Mukesh Sharma. I'm Chief Operating Officer for EasyTech. Let's start with, if you can tell me more about your background. Let's start the discussion from here.
Okay, so the background from whole or the current company?
Yeah, I mean, you can talk about your current role, current company, as well as in past, if you have done something really interesting on which you wanted to share, related to DevOps. Please go ahead and share it.
So right now I'm working with KMG IT Services, Gurgaon. So in this company, right now I'm working in an hybrid environment in which 50% of that includes cloud and 50% of that includes IT internal operations. So if I talk about the internal operations, we have like all the related stuff related to infrastructure like firewalls and servers, etc. If I talk about the cloud, so we are majorly into AWS, and my main task is regarding AWS infra is to create the resources for the production environment and whatever the client requirements are, and also their monitoring and feasibility checks and cost optimization and from starting till the end. And since it's a software development company, so some parts also include the DevOps part. So
Okay.
so that we do in conjunction with the developers. So this is the overall scenario of the company.
Yeah, and this organization is a IT services company.
Yes, KMG IT Services, Gurgaon.
All right. And how big is the organization?
So there are in my office there are around 150 employees, and in total there are around 200 to 230 in total. So in my team,
Okay.
if I talk about, so there are 5 people. One is in US, one is in Kolkata, and 3 of us are in Gurgaon.
Okay. And where are your customers based out of?
All of the customers are international customers are based out at the US, and domestic are in Gurgaon and Noida. So if I talk about domestic, so Hughes and Eli Lilly are the major domestic clients, and if I talk about international, so basically I know the project name, not the client name. So Lamb and Convelo, Commodore, and Med USA. So these kind of projects we are handling currently.
Okay. And apart from the DevOps, are you also involved into ensuring that your production systems are up and running? Majorly the support part of
Yes. So for that we use the monitoring part.
that you are using the monitoring tool for that.
Yes.
Okay. So what all products you have used on AWS?
What all the services?
Yeah, what all services you have used?
So all the general services which are required to create the servers and for the production environment, like EC2 and VPC, CloudWatch, and SQS, SNS, and so all the services and already mentioned in my resume, because not every client is using all of the services, right? So.
Okay. And all these infrastructure you are managing through the panel, or you are managing it through the code?
Both.
Okay. So help me understand, what scripting language you are using it for managing it through code.
Terraform.
Sorry, what is it?
Infrastructure as a code you are talking about, no? So for that we use Terraform, and CloudFormation we are not using. So majority of it is to the panel, but if we want to, if there is any client requirement for that, we have 1 to 2 times also use the Terraform. So because if so Terraform state, if you want to change, so we keep the code and we keep in the form of a file. So if we want to immediately up our infra, so for that that will be used. So the basically the client wanted 3 layers of security. So one is already being provided by the AWS, because apart from some cheap services, AWS is keeping three copies in different regions or the availability zones. And for disaster recovery, we have created our infra in an stopped state in another region, and the third layer is that of the Terraform file.
Okay, so your DR setup is also on AWS or something else?
Please pardon?
So your DR setup is also on AWS, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And so that depends. Some data, so some of the resources we have created replica in AWS for the backup, and for some projects we are dedicated to the AWS.
Okay. So for your DR setup, the infrastructure which you are keeping as a backup, right? Is it of the same scale or it's a reduced scale?
It's around 70 to 80% at a reduced scale.
Okay. But the services may not be running, right?
Services as of now are not running.
Right. So is your, let's say in case of disaster, is your DR setup will automatically kick in, or there is some human intervention required?
So human intervention required, because we have taken the SLA of some hours, right?
Okay. And what all things as a manual activity you guys need to do it to move it to the DR site?
So we have created that DR site, and we just keep an eye on the weekly basis, because we are monitoring in a dedicated way the primary infrastructure. So all of the resources. So till now, there has not been any requirement to run the DR, because we are very much focusing on the primary AWS infra before handover.
Right. So yeah. So my question, Ritvik, is in case of disaster, right? You need to move to the DR site. So what all activity has to be done by the DevOps team so that whatever the SLA is, let's say SLA is 5 hours, 6 hours, right? What all things you have to accomplish in those 6 hours so that the traffic will move to the DR?
So first of all, we will try to on the first hour we will try to troubleshoot the infrastructure where the problem is. So suppose there is the problem is the VPC. So we will check all the interfaces and all the security groups from where the traffic is being blocked, and there are various types of command like netstats, etc. So we will try to figure out what has happened in the few initial hours. If not, then we will start that infrastructure later on. So in the last few hours. So this is the overall plan. And even
Right. I think Ritvik, what you're talking about is troubleshooting the primary infrastructure, right? I'm saying let's say your primary infrastructure is gone, right? I mean, there's some disaster happened, right? I mean, okay. Let me ask a different question. Why do we need to have a disaster recovery, site?
So on a particular region, if any mishap occurs like earthquake, etc., so we create the exact replica of that infrastructure there. So that may be automatically be started or manually be started. So in our design, we will manually start that infra, and so as per our plan, it will take around 2 hours to update infra. And so we can test that in on our weekend basis, and when the infra is not running.
Right. So let's say the disaster happened, right? And the disaster happened, and the data center of AWS is gone on loss, right? Then, but you were saying you are going to check the VPC and the security group and all, right? So if the server and all the infrastructure is already gone, how will you check the security group and
so in that side? So at that time we will not be able to check. So that depends upon the situation. So if there is any problem with our infrastructure, or their complete data center is gone, so there are some inbuilt services provided by the AWS. Like if I talk about the databases, so those are copied three at the three availability zones, right? So so we check what all the services are replicated and what all are not. So
right. So let's say disaster happened. Now you have to move to the disaster site, right, on the DR. My question is, what are things you have to do to actually move it? Right. So troubleshooting is okay, right? I mean, troubleshooting cannot be done because your site is gone, right? primary side is gone.
Hmm.
Now you already have a DR. How do you know that your DR is going to work? First of all, and what all things need to be done so that traffic can move to DR in defined SLA.
So for that, we do the intermittent checkups in between, uh, like in a planned manner. And basically, the when we are designing the infrastructure, so the testing should be done at the initial levels only. So for that, we do the feasibility plans, and if the client is very specific about the securities, so we beforehand tell them that we are also creating the DR backups and all that stuff. So that plan is handed over by the BA team in our company. So that will be tested beforehand only. And if there are any changes at the back end at that particular time, so that will be troubleshooted in that. So if the SLA is breached, so the client will influence the cost. So sometimes
Okay.
that happens.
Okay. Okay. So Ritvik, how do you monitor, your disk space and your, let's say your database is not going out of memory, or whether they blocking queries, basically the, application level and the infra level, right? I mean, what are parameters you monitor and how do you do it?
So the majority of the parameter we use it in the CPU, and if the application is distributed, we will monitor the RAM. So there are RAM basically memory. So
Mhm.
so we are using various kind of monitoring tools. Some are using CloudWatch, and some are using Nagios, and some are using Prometheus and Grafana majorly.
Mhm.
And regarding Splunk, so in Splunk, I have done implementation on the domestic client, and further they
Mhm.
were their engineers continue to work, uh, but different clients are using different kinds of monitor. These four are major monitoring tools.
Okay.
And
And
apart
Ritvik,
from, and
yeah.
one more thing, in these kind of tools, like if I talk about the Nagios and Splunk, so they offer the mailing service which we attach to our internal mail servers using SMTP ports and DNS of the server. So we have also created the mailing service.
Okay. Um, all right. So, Ritvik, in a layman term, can you explain me what is this concept Dockerization means? If at
Dockerization
all.
is basically the containerization of any application or any code. So for that we use Docker. So Docker is basically a containerization tool which does the OS level virtualization.
Why do we need that?
So we need because to distribute any application into microservices, earlier we were using the VMware. So for that we required the dedicated operating system, and to use that operating system we needed the booting files and all the systems files, plus that uses again the graphics and takes on memory. So that part is subtracted in Docker. So that is why it is a very lightweight and very fast to work.
Yeah, but why do I need to actually go for microservices? I mean, what is
So
the need of? Yeah, I mean, okay. So before all these concepts came, right? There was a physical machine where I was putting my applications,
hmm.
right? I take an example of EC2 instance, right? I mean, per EC2 instance, I'm deploying my services, right? Why do
Hmm.
I need to go with Dockerization or the microservices? What is the
So,
benefit of doing all this?
so that is known as the monolithic architecture. So there are two reasons.
Mhm.
One was that if there are various kind of applications, when the developer is creating any application, so that is
Mhm.
running on his system, and because he is doing testing and fixing those bugs according to his environment, but whenever that is deployed on the production servers, so there that creates issue because the environment is different, and front end and the back end applications are not compatible with each other. So for that we had to break that application into microservices and the logical separation, and for that the tool containerization tool came in 2013, and that is known as the Docker.
Okay, great. So Ritvik, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, so right now I don't have any question.
No, nothing.
Mhm.
All right. So I think I'm mostly done with
Mhm.
whatever points I wanted to talk to you.
Mhm.
And it was really good talking to you, Ritvik. Our HR guy, Preeti, I think she's
Yes.
going to get back to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your time and have a good day.
Oh.